Chapter 13. Eiji made it back to Lord Felix's room ahead of the god for once. It was good to get cleaned up before being seen. Finally, he could present himself at his best. He dressed in a sleek blue robe that dipped just a little further down the chest than most and applied his makeup with greater care than he'd used all week. He pulled most of his hair back into a loose braid, but he left several strands free to hang around his face. With any luck, that would be enough to tempt a quiet, "May I touch you?" and a chilly hand pushing them behind his ears. Eiji was ready and kneeling by Lord Felix's preferred chair when the god finally entered. Before dropping into his bow, he managed a quick peek. Lord Felix wasn't befouled and reeking today, but he did look disheveled, with some suspicious stains on his clothes. Eiji was beginning to understand why his master favored such plain, sturdy attire. "Hello, Eiji." Lord Felix's voice was even warmer than usual. "Would you please do me a favor and fetch my pitcher from my washroom? If you'd be so good as to fill it at the barrel and then prepare my basin, I would love to have everything ready so I can wash as soon as I get out of these dirty clothes." Eji's heart sang. It was a struggle to rise gracefully when all he wanted was to scramble up and bolt for the washroom. "Yes, my lord!" He couldn't quite keep the grin off his face. Eji's hand shook a little as he snatched the crude clay pitcher from its place on the edge of the wash basin. "Calm down, you stupid thing." He was being ridiculous. It was the simplest errand in the world. A 2-year-old could have done it. He'd done more complicated work as a scullion all morning. Lord Felix was still removing his shoes when Eiji shot past to get to the barrel, clutching the pitcher and forgetting all his deportment lessons. "Walk gracefully, swing your hips, seem to float." He would do better on his way back through the sitting room. He did. He kept his stride smooth enough that the water barely sloshed in its clay prison. Painfully aware of Lord Felix's eyes on him, he still didn't dare glance in his master's direction. He had a task to perform, and it wasn't to stand around mooning at a handsome god. When the basin was filled, he glanced around the washroom and tried to remember where Lord Felix had taken all his things from the night of the battle. He opened a drawer, praying that it wouldn't contain something he wasn't meant to see, and found that he'd remembered correctly. Pulling out a clean-looking towel, he folded it quickly beside the basin. He also set out the little bottle of oil and laid the hairbrush and the fat cake of soap on top of the towel, trying to arrange it all in as visually pleasing a way as possible. "Thank you, Eiji." At the sound of his master's voice at the doorway, Eiji whirled around and started to dip into his bow. He was halted by a gesture, and Lord Felix went on speaking. "It looks lovely. I might have known that you would go above and beyond. I'm fortunate to have such an accomplished attendant." The god dismissed him so he could change in privacy, and Eiji half floated back to the room to kneel again by the chair and wait. His chest felt swollen tight with glee, and he couldn't stop smiling. Why did talk about love make him panic, but a compliment to his service made him feel like this? In what felt like no time, Lord Felix returned, clean and freshly dressed, and settled into the chair next to Eiji. "I feel much better, thank you," the god said. "Shall we make a habit of that? Would you be willing to set those things out for me whenever you make it back to our rooms first?" Was Eiji glowing? Was there light pouring out of his body? Lord Felix would probably say something if there were. "I was good. I did so well that he wants to receive the same service again, every day. There's something I can do for him every day." "It is my pleasure to serve, my lord," he breathed. The god hummed in response, sounding as if he were on the verge of saying something else. Then he stopped and shifted a little in his chair before asking, "How was your day?" The question didn't worry and itch at Eiji like it usually did. In fact, he had to work to avoid leaning against the chair, the leg, the god. How long had it been since he'd been relaxed like this? "It was wonderful, my lord. Rokuro taught me how to shape the loaves." Then, caught by an unexpected twinge of shyness, "But that is hardly worth— I don't know why I said wonderful. It's a small thing." It was small, but it wasn't just the bread. It was the way Lord Felix and Zenji had complimented him, the way Norio had risked punishment to bring those compliments to him, and yes, it was also the bread. It had been good to do work that took a little care, to learn how to get it just right. Roll the dough flat, make it into a log, tuck the ends, slice little diagonal lines into the top layer. He'd been practicing in his mind all day. To hear Rokuro's enthusiastic praise, better than good, wonderful. Still, he flushed a little at the idea of making so much out of so little in conversation with a war god. Not at all, his master replied. Did he sound this warm and sincere when he spoke with the other gods? One doesn't get to learn a new skill every day. It's something I would be excited about, too. I'm sure Rokuro would teach you as well, my lord, if you wished it. The words had tumbled out before Eiji realized that of course Lord Felix had meant a new skill generally, not bread making. Stupid! He opened his mouth to apologize, only to be interrupted by his master's voice, which had turned thoughtful. I would like that, but I would rather learn from you. Do you think Rokuro would teach you how to make bread, beginning to end, so that you could teach me how to do it like he does? I am sure he would if my lord willed it. Why in the world should Lord Felix will it? He couldn't eat mortal food. Why should he waste his time learning to make it? That sounds wonderful. It's been some time since I baked bread, the god enthused. Then, his tone turning teasing, You'll be a patient teacher, won't you? Of course, my lord. Eji's mind was stuck on another part of his master's statement. It took some effort not to blurt, You made bread? When? Why? Of course, bread-making was hardly a stranger activity for a war god than elder care. Oh, good. There was a moment of hesitation, then, I'm sure Norio told you about his little misadventure? It wasn't a question, but he said it like one. Eji's smile stole back onto his face at the memory of the risk his old acquaintance had taken on his behalf. He did, my lord. He was very grateful for your kind intervention. Lord Felix snorted at that. Right, I'm sure he's overcome with gratitude. Eiji had to swallow a snicker. His master seemed to have a fairly solid understanding of Norio's personality. Did he say anything that worried... I'm sorry, I won't ask you to carry tales about your friends. Lord Felix was quiet for a moment, then, May I please touch you? Eiji hadn't realized he'd been hoping for those words until he heard them. Of course, my lord. Lord Felix's fingers went right for the loose strands of hair. Yes! The god tucked them back, tilted up Eji's chin, then beamed down at him, opening his mouth to speak. Still caught up in pleasure, Eiji couldn't help smiling back. Lord Felix seemed to abandon whatever he had been about to say as his smile stretched even wider and the skin around his soft, dark eyes fanned into dozens of delicate lines. His usually steady gaze altered, pupils dilating until the god looked half dazzled. It felt right in a way the other touches hadn't. Eiji had been good, and he was being rewarded with his master's attention. Relaxing into the contact, Eiji waited obediently until the god remembered, some moments later, what he'd been meaning to say. I'm looking forward to tomorrow, Lord Felix said. What would you like to do with our day off? Whatever pleases you, my lord, Eiji replied easily, unable to suppress another smile. Well, and why should he suppress it? Lord Felix had said that he enjoyed Eji's smile. Why hide his pleasure at the thought of a day with no lesser obligations to distract from his service to his master? A strange expression flickered over the god's face so quickly that Eiji wasn't sure he hadn't imagined it. I thought I might give you a tour of the ship, Lord Felix said, with no hint of anything unusual in his voice. He must have imagined the look after all. The below-deck portions, at least, and I can introduce you to some of my friends that you haven't met yet. Does that sound all right? Yes, my lord. Eiji nodded. He wondered who these friends might be. It would be strange for the god to refer to humans as his friends, but it would be just as strange for him to bother introducing Eiji to gods. He supposed he would just have to see where the day took him. For once, that didn't seem like such a dreadful prospect.